Hello, this is Anna Laura Brown, host of the Autoimmune Rehab Podcast, where we talk about how to actually thrive and heal your autoimmune condition, rather than just covering it up with pills or changing your diet and hoping you'll feel better one day. We feature solo episodes on helpful topics and interviews with guests who have actually walked in your shoes with autoimmune disorders and/or who have years of experience in helping people to thrive and not just survive with autoimmune challenges. I'm a health coach who started this podcast because I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's in 2018, and I wanted to inspire hope and transform health for people with autoimmune challenges. So keep listening, and let's get you the help and hope you really need. This is the Autoimmune Rehab Podcast. In today's episode, I have Sarah Thomas with me, and we are going to talk about something that is not directly autoimmune related, but that is similar. And if you have autoimmune issues, you are likely to be more likely to have challenges with this. We're going to be talking about your hormones, and especially your hormones as you get a little bit older, you go into perimenopause and then eventually into menopause. So, welcome, Sarah. Why don't you start off a little bit by sharing with us about who you are and a little bit about your story?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and share with your audience today for sure. So I have been in the wellness space for 27 years as a fitness instructor, a personal trainer, a nutrition specialist, and I am now a menopause specialist and hormone specialist directly relating to a lot of hormonal issues that we experience in this season of life and perimenopause and menopause. And so I got into this field, just kind of really stumbled upon it in my own journey of I was an obese child, I was an anorexic teenager, I was an over-exercising, under-eating young adult. I am in my late 40s now and experience all the things in perimenopause that the blanket things that you experience. But through my journey, I have learned how to tweak my own schedule, nutrition, balance out my hormones. And now that's what I teach to women across the country, how to do the same. And so we have hundreds of clients, members who are along this journey with us. And so we teach women is not just the fitness and the nutrition piece, but it's the stress management. It is the hormonal piece. It is the metabolism piece of how we are changing as we get older, how our muscle mass is changing. And the big piece of what we do is we create a community for women to learn and grow and connect with each other. And we also teach the education. And so this is like one of my most favorite things ever is to teach the why behind the how, not just to tell you, hey, go do this, but explain why it is that we're doing things differently, maybe in this phase of life than we did, earlier in life. And so I don't have a personal autoimmune story. However, we have many women in our membership who suffer from autoimmune issues and who have come into our lifestyle with autoimmune issues and have been able to heal themselves through a lot of what we teach in our membership and some of the foundational components. And I love what you said earlier in your intro, like without the pills and all of that, because that's what we're about. We're about like, let's get to the root cause. Let's do what we can foundationally, naturally, and then see where we are, right? And then see what happens to our overall well-being.
That's awesome, Sarah. That's great. So, why don't we start, I guess, a little bit at the very beginning? So, a lot of these terms, we throw these terms around like everybody knows what they mean, like perimenopause and menopause and all this kinds of things. And other than maybe the obvious one, where you start having irregular periods, if assuming you've had regular periods most of your life, how does somebody really start figuring out that perimenopause is a thing? And how would someone know if their symptoms are something that they need to get help with? Let's put it that way.
That's a great question because we all know like the hot flashes. Are you having hot flashes, right? Like that's the cornerstone, so to speak, of like, oh, you're going through perimenopause. And but not everybody experiences that. Not everybody experiences a hot flash. And so, the what I tend to hear from women is I don't feel like myself. And so there's so many symptoms we can list off of. You might be experiencing this, you might be experiencing that, but the biggest umbrella that I see is that women say, I just don't feel like myself. I don't feel like I did 5 years ago. I don't feel like I did, before. Or a lot of the things I hear are I'm irritated. I'm irritated with my spouse and my kids. And they're not really doing anything. I'm just have this like feeling of of irritated of for no reason. Anxiety is a big one. I think anxiety is a big symptom that we don't talk about enough. I think a lot of women actually experience this, but don't really talk about it amongst each other because they don't see that as, oh, that's a perimenopausal symptom. But that's a big one that we can experience of like, you've never had anxiety before, but suddenly you feel very anxious. You can feel anxious just in everyday life. You can feel anxious in social situations. The weight gain is a big one. Many women that come to me will say, I don't feel like myself. My clothes are fitting tighter and I'm doing all the same things I've always done. And so what I've always done is now no longer working for me. I don't feel good. I don't look good. My head is foggy. I'll mention this symptom because this is one that is fairly common, but again, a lot of people don't see it as a perimenopausal symptom. Is frozen shoulder syndrome. And so when women are like, oh, something's wrong with my shoulder, like my arms, like it's not working right or whatever. And what they'll do is they'll go to see a doctor, and they'll go through all the physical components of what's going on, but it's a hormonal change. And so the hard part, I will say, at the end of all this is that we don't always know, like, okay, bingo, this is it. I'm in perimenopause. But if you can go through a few of those symptoms, a list of things, it's like, oh yeah, yes, I feel this way. Yeah, I'm not sleeping well. If you can check off a few, you're most likely in perimenopause. Your periods can be irregular. They don't have to be. You can be going through perimenopause and your periods could still be regular, but you're starting to get those symptoms. And so I think the biggest thing to know is that you need to be in tune to your body at any point between early 30s and late 40s. Like we can start going through perimenopause in that time frame all the way up until 50 or so. And we can be in this phase of our life, perimenopause to menopause, for over 20 years. That's a long time. So we need to be in tune to our body. We need to understand some of the symptoms and understand really how to thrive. I say this all the time, and you said this earlier in your intro, like, how can we thrive in this time? We don't have a choice. We're all going to go through it. We're going to go through it regardless, but we do get to choose how we walk through this stage of our life.
That's awesome. I love it. Let's repeat that again for people to maybe even write it down or materialize in your head. You get to choose how you go through the stage of life.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. So let's talk a minute here as well. So you were saying you have in your community a lot of women that have autoimmune conditions that come to you
Mhm.
for help. Are there any particular patterns or anything you've noticed with the women that have autoimmune conditions that start going through this perimenopause? Do they have a tendency sometimes to have symptoms that are more aggravated or different symptoms at all than women who don't have autoimmune conditions? Or is there anything you've noticed in that aspect at all?
Yeah, good question. Somewhat, yes. So, and sometimes I can pinpoint, okay, you have an autoimmune issue, and this is a little bit, more of a symptom, or you're more sensitive to this. And other times it's like, well, it could be, but it could be perimenopause. So again, it's kind of hard to pinpoint, but I will say one that I see regularly is just the insulin sensitivity. Again, when we're going through perimenopause, we also can become a little more insulin resistant as a general rule. But with some autoimmune issues, we also see that they can be a little bit more sensitive to the insulin. And so then that's where, regulating some of our food intake, and not only regulating food intake, but manipulating food intake, like how the order maybe in which that you're eating certain foods, it can also have a big impact on how your hormones are regulated or lack thereof.
That's interesting. Yeah. So the order of certain foods. So what
Mhm.
would be some basic things for somebody to maybe try or consider when it comes to the order of their foods to help with that?
Yeah, yeah, great question again. So when we're and I'll just say this for if you have an autoimmune disease or you're just going through perimenopause, that if you feel like you're struggling with um, carbohydrates, right? Because our carbohydrates are what are spiking our insulin, bottom line. All right. So we have three macronutrients: proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Fats and proteins are not spiking our insulin. It's the carbohydrates. That's why they get a bad rap. That's why people are like, I can't eat carbohydrates. I just can't do it. And I'm going to pack on all the pounds and I'm going to feel terrible and whatever. But my philosophy is you can eat carbohydrates if you pair them with your protein and your fat and ultimately some fiber too, because fiber is going to pull your insulin down as well. So if you kind of visualize it as a roller coaster, right? So if you are only eating carbohydrates, and let me just like backtrack a little bit. When I'm speaking carbohydrates, I think this is why a lot of people say I can't eat carbohydrates. There are like two different buckets of carbohydrates. We have processed carbohydrates. Those are what I call packaged products. They shouldn't even be called foods. Packaged products in a
That's a good
box
way to put
or a
it.
bag, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Packaged products. Or we have whole foods that are carbohydrates. All right. Whole foods, fruits and vegetables. And many women don't even know this. Fruits and vegetables are carbohydrates. And absolutely, we should eat those. Those are real whole foods meant for us to consume. So, it's kind of like backtrack a little bit. So, we're talking carbohydrates, either one, either one. Take fruit, take an orange and take a potato chip, right? You got your packaged versus your real food. Both of those are going to spike your insulin. Okay. But the whole food fruit, the orange, has fiber. So it's not going to be as big of a spike. There's other things, processed chemicals and stuff too that are in the chip, but it's not going to spike your insulin as much because number one, it has fiber. Now, if we take either one of those and we pair it with a protein and or a fat, typically a protein will give you some fat anyway. But if you have a protein and let's say like a slice of avocado, even better, protein and fat is going to take that roller coaster, that straight up spike, and then that drop. If you just had the carbohydrate, it's going to take it from a roller coaster to a rolling hill. So it's going to help, it'll increase, but not about half the time, right? It'll increase about half and then it won't drop. It will just kind of give you just that simple rolling energy that we want. So when we get the big rolling hill of just that spike and that decrease, then we have problems with our energy throughout the day. The other thing that we talk about is we talk about timing our macronutrients. And so when you time your proteins, your fats, and your carbohydrates, there are certain times a day when you're eating them and then you're not eating them. That also can help have a big impact on your insulin levels, insulin resistance, and ultimately what we want is to be metabolic flexible. When we're metabolic flexible, that means our body easily can ebb and flow, just like if your muscles are flexible, right? They're pliable. And if you're having a piece of cake, your body can adapt and it knows what to do and it can help like distribute those things easily in your body. If you don't ever eat it, your body doesn't know what to do with it. So by kind of manipulating some of our food, we can teach our women how to still eat some of the things that they love, but maybe at certain times a day or pairing it with other foods, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does absolutely. So I assume that that's something that you teach people in your program, and like your burn
Yeah.
fat and feast is, I think, what you primarily call your program
Yes,
for sure.
absolutely. Yeah.
So share with us a little bit more about how that works. Like if somebody's listening to this and they're saying, "Hey, help,"
Yeah. Yeah.
how does your program work? And obviously you're saying it's for women that, are kind of in that perimenopause. I would assume maybe even women that are in the menopause phase can probably still benefit from it.
Yeah, absolutely. So that those are our people. Our people are women in perimenopause and menopause. We because we talk so much about the education. And so if you're kind of looking at what we teach in Burn, Fat, and Feast, we're multifaceted because wellness is a puzzle. And as we get older, the puzzle pieces, just like actual puzzles, the pieces become smaller and they become more of them. There's more puzzle pieces that we need to kind of figure out how they all fit together to create that beautiful picture. And so within what we do in Burn, Fat, and Feast, we teach the why behind everything. And so we talk about like what actually is your why, how to reset your mind and practice a positive mindset, but also kind of help erase some of the things that we've learned through the years. And I will say one of the big ones that I really work on with women is the calories in versus calories out approach. Like you do not have to undereat. In fact, undereating is holding you back in all areas of wellness, whether you're talking about fat loss, hormonal balance, metabolism, autoimmune disease, any of that, it's holding you back. And so we talk about that mindset, finding your why. One of the other pillars that we really talk about is rest. Physical rest, digestive rest, again, very important for those of us suffering from autoimmune issues. We talked a little bit about the macros. So we teach our women how to have macro balance, proteins, fats, and carbs, how to eat the right amount, what that looks like, the best approach, and how it fits in with exercise. This is a big one because we're not taught like we're taught eat healthy and work out. That's a great start. But if you want to be the best version of yourself as you get older, you need to know how to exercise effectively and not spend an hour a day. Because I don't know about you, but I don't have time for that. I don't have time to spend an hour a day working out, nor do I want to. And so we have to figure out how the best approach is to working out as we get older, what we need to do more of, what we need to do less of, and how it fits in with our nutrition. That's huge. We teach our ladies like, okay, we're going to manipulate our macronutrients. These are the macros that you're going to eat. We have meal plans for our ladies as well. And you're going to pair it with this type of workout because that's going to help your hormonal balance. That's going to help increase your metabolism, increase the fat burn, et cetera. So we, again, talk about the puzzle pieces, how it all works together. And then our supportive community is like the best of the best. And I always say, I can't take credit for that because I simply created the space for an online community for our ladies, but our ladies are unbelievable. They're incredibly supportive. They're very motivating. They know how to give tough love, and they're all walking through the same season of life. And so it's a safe space. So that's incredible for our ladies to have. And then of course we do all of this in a step-by-step system. So, I know it sounds like there's a lot involved. And there is a lot involved, but we walk you through it. Like, here's what you need to do now. Here's now what you need to learn. Here's the next step. And so we put all of it together so you don't have to figure it out, right? We give the meal plan. We give you, here's the workout you're going to do today. Here's how we want you to eat. You want to eat your own food, great. But here's a meal plan if you want to follow it. So we try to put all those pieces together for our ladies to simplify things and to help them finally feel like, okay, now I got it. Now I can do something that's sustainable, that doesn't deprive me, that I can actually like live a real life, right? And go on vacation and not feel like I'm on a wagon versus off a wagon. And so that's what we want for our ladies, is to feel like this is sustainable.
That's awesome. That's great because as I always tell people, if it's not sustainable, if it's not feasible for you in everyday life, you're not going to do it. No matter
No.
what it is, whether it's some kind of an autoimmune diet, whether it's some kind of an exercise routine, a sleep routine, whatever it is, that
Yeah.
which you can't maintain in normal life, you're just not going to do. So,
You're not going to do. And like, I feel like at the end of the day, don't waste your time. Why would you waste your time on that, right? And nobody wants to live a life where they feel like they can't have a social life either, and that's part of the joy of us being social beings, is to be able to, go out and do the things and go the places. And so, yeah, I mean, don't waste your time on something that you can't sustain.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. So go ahead and tell us where somebody would go to learn more about it. And of course, we'll have it linked in the show notes so people don't have to necessarily write it down. Like if they're driving or at the moment listening to this, they can just go check it
Absolutely.
out in the description.
Yeah, we try to make it super simple. We are burn, fat, and feast, and we spell the and out. So burn, fat, and feast.com. That's our website. We have lots of free resources on our website. So you can go there, you can download some freebies. We've got like video educational series that you can do for free. And so if you just go to the website, you can find all that stuff there. We're also on social media. Again, I try to make it super simple. We're Burn, Fat, and Feast on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Pinterest. So you can find us all those places as well. And we'd love to have you along the journey, whether it's just downloading a freebie or just contacting us to find out more about what we do.
Awesome, that's great. So thanks so much. I'm sure this has been really valuable to people, Sarah. So before we get going, let's ask you one final question. If you could go back in time, let's say you've been doing this about 27 years, you said, let's say about 30 years ago, before you
Mhm.
started doing this, what is one thing that you wish you knew or that you wish that somebody had told you about, whether that's perimenopause or about diet changes or weight
Yeah.
loss or any of that? What do you wish somebody had said? Hey, Sarah,
Yeah. There's so many. But if I were to pick one, I would say to stop under eating. I spent I mean, decades of my life under eating because I thought that was it, right? Just to under eat, calories in versus calories out. And if I had known then what I know now about how it's going to wreck my metabolism, how it's going to ruin my hormone balance, and I'm going to have to undo all of those years and reteach myself mentally and physically get my body used to actually fueling it correctly, I would have done things so differently in eating. I would have prioritized the macronutrients and not worried about the calories. And that's part of what we do in Burn, Fat, and Feast. And I say that because I feel that, but so many women in our community say the same thing. Oh my gosh, where were you 20 years ago? I'm like, I know. Where was this 20 years ago? Why couldn't we have done this 20 years ago and felt like we were ahead of the game? So most definitely. If you feel like you're under eating right now, or if you're not even sure, like just reach out. Like I can even just help you figure out if you're under eating. And I'll just, spoiler alert, most women are under eating.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that you would say that too, because I think most women think they're overeating, you know?
Yeah, I know. I know that's the funny thing because when ladies join our community, they're like, oh my gosh, wait, I'm not eating enough. You're telling me to eat more? I can't eat more. Okay, just if you trust the process, take a big breath. I promise you, you're not the only one that's been here. But yeah, it can feel scary at first. But most women are under eating, but they're under eating or overeating and under eating certain things. And we just need to like recalculate what that looks like, start eating more of some other things, which can help dilute some of the things that maybe you're overeating.
That's awesome. That's great. So to sum this up, reach out to Sarah if you feel like you could really benefit, which I'm sure pretty much almost everyone here can benefit to some degree or another. And make sure that you are not under eating and realize that, you can make changes and you can do it and it can be sustainable for you and it can really have a big impact on your life.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yep, absolutely.